Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this week's National Bleeding Disorders Foundation, formerly National Hemophilia Foundation, Wednesday webinar. My name is Fiona Robinson, and I'm the series host. This webinar is being recorded and will be available to the community on the NBDF website, bleeding.org, shortly after the webinar. In today's webinar, we will learn how to empower your journey as we explore the Own Your Path and Thrive programs with NBDF's education team. We encourage you to ask any questions you may have today. You can ask your question by using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen at any time during the webinar. We will monitor your questions, and then following our speakers' presentations, we'll put your questions to them. Today, we are joined by 4 members of the NBDF education team: Education Specialist Ryan Sarshuri, Manager of Education Heather Hicks, Director of Education Lena Volland, and Senior Director of Education Brendan Hayes. Presentations today will be in 2 parts. After the first part on Own Your Path, we'll take a break for questions, and then we'll continue with the portion on the Thrive program. I'd like to thank Brendan, Lena, Heather, and Ryan for joining us today, and I'll turn things over now to Brendan to get us started.
Thank you, Fiona. As Fiona mentioned, my name is Brendan Hayes, and I'm the Senior Director of Education at NBDF, and I am joined by the other members of the project team, so Heather and Ryan are on. And we're very excited to provide more information today on the Own Your Path program. We're going to discuss the outcomes of our pilot, how we have expanded the program to make it a bit more inclusive, a general program overview, a behind the scenes look at the application or app, and then information on eligibility and how to actually sign up for Own Your Path. Next slide. The National Bleeding Disorders Foundation is dedicated to finding cures for inheritable blood and bleeding disorders and to addressing and preventing the complications of these disorders through research, education, and advocacy, enabling people and families to thrive. The Own Your Path program supports our mission by teaching people with bleeding disorders how they can improve their quality of life by learning more about their own bleeding disorder and sticking to their treatment plan. Next slide. Okay, thought to start with some background information. The program was created through a cooperative agreement with NBDF and the CDC. We also partnered with NextJ Connected Wellness, a health app company. NextJ supports multiple chronic diseases and has developed extensive resources on healthy lifestyle management. Own Your Path began as a pilot program. It was focused on US-based adult males aged 18 to 29 on prophy for hemophilia A or B. The program was originally designed to increase treatment adherence during those transition years, so moving out of the home, going off to college, etc. Hence that narrow audience. Although we had a small number of participants, we learned a great deal. We received very positive feedback and recognized the value of this type of program for people with bleeding disorders. Several individuals applied to the program, but were not eligible because they were over 29. They had a different bleeding disorder, or they were part of our women and people who have or had the potential to menstruate community. Clearly, there is a demand for this type of programming outside this narrow pilot, and we're going to cover program expansion in some upcoming slides. Next slide, please. So, Own Your Path, what's the why? So we recognize the value of adherence to long-term outcomes, and we wanted to create a program that showcases the benefit of prophy along with a plan to get into a healthy routine. We all lose track of our habits and goals on occasion, and this program focuses on getting participants back on track through education, support, and coaching. There's more to being adherent than just doing your treatments on time. So the app also includes valuable information on lifestyle management, including things like goal setting, managing stress, improving sleep, exercise, and more. We also have financial incentives along the way to keep it fun and engaging. Next slide. We all know that There are a lot of benefits to being adherent. We wanted to emphasize those benefits of adhering to a prophylactic regimen throughout the program. Things like fewer bleeding episodes, reduction in joint disease, decreased pain, fewer sick days, and an overall higher quality of life. We stress these benefits throughout the program and work with participants to build a personalized plan to get them there. Next slide, please. Now, there are several factors that lead to declining health in the U.S. Things like anxiety, depression, sleep, and stress. The Own Your Path program is designed to be whole person centric and includes coaching from a certified health coach and a vast library of resources that can be consumed on your time. Being adherent to treatment is only part of the solution. As we all know, it's hard to be adherent to treatment if other areas of our life are not in order. So things like emotional health, sleep, and stress management are also really important. If you're staying up late to study, to work, or for caregiving, getting up and doing a treatment at 7 o'clock in the morning isn't desirable or always feasible. These types of issues are explored with the health coach. And we're going to provide more details on this later in the presentation. Next slide. As discussed, feedback was very favorable. We've included a few quotes here from participants for you to review. Overall, participants reported increased confidence in treating, increased skills to manage their bleeding disorder, improvements in goal setting and building healthy habits, and a strong appreciation of their health coaches. Participants also enjoyed the ability to add different trackers to the platform to monitor things like steps and sleep. Due to the positive feedback and the multitude of resources we created for the program, we wanted to expand it to a larger audience. Next slide. So before we move on to the specifics, I wanted to highlight a few of the additional benefits of the Own Your Path program. We are blessed to have effective treatments for many bleeding disorders, but living with those bleeding disorders is often challenging. This program provides tools and resources in one location to help participants lead healthy, vibrant lives with a bleeding disorder. This is a program that you can do at your own pace and can be done in around an hour or less per week. A cornerstone of the program is helping participants to recognize obstacles and to build a plan to overcome them. Next up is Heather Hicks, Manager of Education, who will speak more to about the program expansion and how it works. Heather? Heather, I believe you're on mute.
So who is eligible for our program now? We are excited that with our new program expansion, we're able to offer the Own Your Path program to men and WPPM who are 18 years or older. Participants need to have either hemophilia A, hemophilia B, or VWD. They need to be on prophy and reside in the US or a US territory. This program is currently only available in English. Participants will need to meet all criteria to be eligible for the program. Next slide, please. The Own Your Path program consists of 3 main program components: workbooks, health coaching, and monthly meetups. We have developed a total of 58 workbooks that teach skills that are helpful to know if you have a bleeding disorder. Topics include steps to self-infusion or self-injection, disclosing a bleeding disorder at work or school, traveling with a bleeding disorder, and many more. The second component of Own Your Path is the health coach. This was an extremely popular part of the program during our pilot. Each participant can schedule up to 4 calls with their health coach through the platform. The current health coach is a kinesiologist and we have met with her to provide information about hemophilia A and B, VWD, challenges that the WPPM population who have a bleeding disorder may face, challenges that younger adults may face, for instance, transitioning to living on their own, starting college for the first time, or entering the workforce, and challenges that older adults may experience, such as having comorbidities along with a bleeding disorder. The third component of the Own Your Path program is the monthly meetups. This is a time for participants to experience in-depth learning on a particular topic. It's also a great time for them to meet other individuals who have a bleeding disorder. Last year, we had a variety of NBDF staff speak at the meetups, as well as the health coach from the platform. Some of the topics we presented on last year included information about gene and innovative therapies, safe physical activity, and understanding health insurance. Next slide, please. So how does this all work? The first time participants log into the Own Your Path platform, they receive an initial intake survey. This survey asks them questions about their bleeding disorder to gauge their current knowledge. Some examples asked are, I know which treatment product I'm taking, or I know the type and subtype of von Willebrand disease that I have. Based on participants' answers, they are provided with workbooks on the platform that correspond to topics that they need to increase their knowledge in. For example, a person who doesn't know the name of their treatment product will receive a workbook that explains what they should know about their treatment product, like the name of the medication, their dose, and how the treatment is administered. Workbooks are released throughout the entirety of the 6-month program. NextJ has an extensive privacy policy and identifiable information from surveys and other information provided on the app by participants is protected and secure. Each participant is assigned a participant ID consisting of letters and numbers. When NBDF is provided with program data for evaluation purposes, participant IDs are used to ensure that information collected remains de-identified. To further enhance the participant experience, each participant is encouraged to schedule a call with the health coach approximately every 6 weeks during the program. The health coach speaks with the participant about their health goals, helps the participant identify any barriers to achieving their goals, and brainstorms with the participant about how to overcome those barriers they've identified. One of the goals will be related to treatment adherence, and participants can also make a second goal, such as reducing stress, increasing physical activity, making healthy meals. In addition to the workbooks and health coach, the app also has pieces such as health library, trackers, and goal-setting worksheet. The health library is a wealth of information about living an overall healthy lifestyle. It has tips for making nutritious meals. It has learning for how to meditate and information on how to get better sleep at night. These resources are available to all participants. Next slide, please. We wanted to tailor our program so all participants would feel like there's information that is just for them, since we know that each bleeding disorder has its own unique characteristics. For hemophilia, we have specific workbooks about both hemophilia A and hemophilia B, information about different levels of severity of hemophilia, and types of treatments available for hemophilia. We also have information about scheduling an appointment at your HTC, information about the role of the healthcare team and each member of the healthcare team at the HTC, and information about future therapies such as rebalancing agents. Next slide, please. In addition to workbooks that apply to both hemophilia and VWD, we have specific workbooks with information about the types and subtypes of VWD and different treatment options for VWD. To our knowledge, this is one of just a few initiatives that has information specific to people who have VWD. Next slide, please. For WPPM, we have workbooks that teach WPPM how to practice self-advocacy if they feel like their treatment plan isn't working. We also have information about different types of treatment options that WPPM may use to manage their bleeding disorder. This is one of just a few initiatives that we know about that is designed specifically for WPPM who have already been diagnosed with a bleeding disorder and are on Prophy. Next up, our education specialist, Ryan Sarshuri, is going to show us what the app looks like.
There are many exciting components to the Own Your Path app program for eligible participants. When first logging on, participants will be shown their dashboard, which contains upcoming workbooks they need to be completed, a handy treatment log to keep track of treatments, the circle of care, which includes the program concierge and health coach, health library content, and various trackers, such as the pain tracker shown on the right-hand side of the slide. Participants can make appointments with the health coach through the dashboard or the care plans tab and use goal trackers to keep on target with health or treatment goals. As Heather mentioned earlier, workbooks are a large part of the Own Your Path program. When participants click on a workbook, a set of slides will begin. The first slide will contain the topic of the workbook, and as participants move through the information on each slide, they'll learn more about the specified topic. The workbooks are not typically long, and they range anywhere from 2 to 10 minutes to complete. At the end of each workbook, there is a knowledge check, which tests the participants' understanding of the workbook content. The knowledge check are usually around 2 to 5 questions that range from multiple choice, true or false, short answer, or matching. When a participant completes a workbook and finishes the knowledge check, the workbook is considered complete, and the participant can move on to other workbooks. The Health Library is an exciting resource for Own Your Path participants. There are hundreds of resources available in the Health Library, all accessible to the program participants. The Health Library can be filtered by topic or by search using the handy search bar at the top of the library. Health Library topics range from specific articles about certain bleeding disorders, mental health topics, treatment options and therapies, recipes, workouts, and much more. We have added NBDF resources that provide extra information about bleeding disorders in general. Some of the extra resources include the Playing It Safe guide, which gives a score to different types of physical activity based on how safe each type is for someone who has a bleeding disorder. We also have our newly released MASAC for You documents that have recommendations written for consumers, specifically our WPPM community, including important knowledge that is needed before, during, and after pregnancy and during delivery. The health coach can point participants to specific articles from the Health Library and browse through Health Library topics on their own. The information provided on the Health Library primarily comes from NextJ Health, NBDF, and the CDC. You may be wondering about how to sign up for this program. The QR code on the screen will take you to the Own Your Path webpage on NBDF's website, bleeding.org. We are excited to show the community all our inclusive updates to the webpage, which also includes the link for the eligibility survey. Simply scan the QR code, scroll down to the button labeled Take the Survey, and the eligibility survey should pop up. It takes on average about 5 to 8 minutes to complete. And once you've completed the survey, you'll either be contacted by NBDF staff letting you know your eligibility status or by NextJ with your login information. We're very excited to have new folks join this program. For those who may be interested in sharing information about the Own Your Path program, there are 4 different flyers designed for specific eligible populations that you can access and print on the Own Your Path webpage, which is linked in the QR code on the screen. You can even email our team at ownyourpath@bleeding.org, and we can send you copies of any of these flyers. The Own Your Path program is paid for by our cooperative agreement with the CDC. For more information about our CDC cooperative agreement, please go to either bleeding.org or cdc.org. We look forward to welcoming new participants to this exciting program. I will now turn it back over to Fiona.
Super. Thank you very much for that really interesting presentation. I really appreciate hearing about this program and how it can benefit the community. Just before we dive into our Q&A, I want to just draw the attention of our audience to the chat. If you look at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you should see a chat icon. And if you click on it, you should see a link there that I dropped into the chat, which takes you also to the website of the Own Your Path program. So you might want to just take a second to copy and save that somewhere so that you continue to have access to that after the webinar ends. So we can get started with our questions for Heather, Ryan, Brendan on the Own Your Path. And just a reminder that we will follow that with the presentation on the Thrive program and take questions for that after that presentation. So a question, maybe it's a reverse question, which is maybe not really fair, but you said that you can fill out an eligibility survey, and it sounds like you have a lot of different people who are eligible. So who is not eligible for this program?
I am going to ask Heather to answer that question.
Sure. Thanks, Brendan. So we currently are not enrolling anyone who is below the age of 18 years old. There are special permissions and things that need to be set up before we would be able to enroll this particular population. So at this time, we're not able to take anyone under 18. We also are not able to take anyone from a country that is outside of the US. So due to this being a CDC cooperative agreement, currently it is only for those living in the US or US territories. We know that there are many other bleeding disorders besides just hemophilia and VWD. We are not able to take anyone that has a bleeding disorder if it's not hemophilia A or B or VWD. And we also only offer this program in English. So if somebody does live in the United States or a US territory and does not speak English, unfortunately, at this time, we're not able to have them enroll in the program. And I think that's it. I think I hit all the populations.
So that leads to another maybe quick follow-up question, which is, are there any plans to translate it? Is there an opportunity maybe to eventually make it available in a language other than English?
We would love to in the future, certainly make it available to other languages. So that's something that we've got our eye on for future iterations of this program.
Great. And so all of the resources that come with it, are they only available to people who meet the eligibility criteria, or are some of them available on the website even if you can't enroll in the program?
Right now, we have probably close to 60 workbooks, so it's a pretty extensive library. And then I can't even imagine how many, probably hundreds of resources in our health library. And so right now, those are in the Next J app that we had discussed. So only those who are eligible for the program have direct access to those.
Right.
Now, I will say that if someone is interested in learning more about what the content is, we're more than happy to have a conversation and share that information. If we have healthcare providers on the call that are interested in learning more about the program, we would love to set up a meeting with you and we can walk you through what the platform looks like. And the best way to get in touch with us would be at ownyourpath@bleeding.org, and we'll follow up and schedule some time with you.
Great. Okay. I think that probably answers this question that we did have come from an audience member asking whether the HTCs have access to the workbooks and the health library. And I suppose in a way, that's sort of a two-part question. I'm going to maybe overinterpret their question, but the health library is a lot of resources. The workbooks, people are filling those in. So let's say I am attending an HTC for my care. I'm filling in a workbook on the app. Would my care team at the HTC have access to the information I'm putting into the app?
Well, the thing that's I think really great about this program is there are just a ton of privacy built into this. And so you can certainly share the information with your hemophilia treatment center, but they won't have direct access to it unless you allow them to have that information. Yeah, so they won't necessarily know how you answer any of the questions in your workbook. NBDF staff won't really know how you answer questions in the workbook. That's really a tool that you would use to learn.
Mhm.
And the conversations that you will have with your health coach and that relationship are also, that's also private information too. And so, you can feel comfortable and confident in what you need to share with the health coach, what you want to share with the health coach. I think it's also important to note in regards to the health coaches, a lot of people who have bleeding disorders feel like they are constantly telling their story. They're constantly talking about their bleeding disorder and their history from birth to wherever they are today. And the nice thing about this is these health coaches aren't really focused on helping you treat your bleeding disorder. They're focused on helping you to be adherent and to live a great life. And so, if you do have questions that are specific to your bleeding disorder, they will likely refer you to one of the workbooks or one of the NBDF staff who will then refer you to someone at your treatment center to answer those health specific questions.
Okay, so it really can work hand in hand with your relationship with your HTC. And I know that it's intended for, if I understand correctly, people who are using prophylaxis. Is that right?
That's correct.
Does it have a role to play anywhere in shared decision-making and consideration of whether the treatment that you're having, that you're receiving, is the right one for you, or whether, because as other treatment options become available, is there a way that this app also kind of addresses that question of, okay, I've been infusing for like 15 years. Is this still the right thing for me? Or I've recently started using something else. Is it the right thing for me? Is that part of kind of what this looks at as well, or?
I think a byproduct of Own Your Path is a more well-educated consumer. So you're going to learn more about what treatment options are available. And I think that naturally leads to more informed conversations with your provider in terms of shared decision making. So, I think this provides an excellent opportunity to learn more and to share what you have learned with your provider and to ask questions.
Right, great. So really it puts you on a more equal footing for those conversations.
Absolutely.
Okay, maybe with just we've got just a couple of minutes before we switch over to the other portion of the webinar, maybe I can just ask you each, and then maybe I can start with Ryan if I'll put you on the spot, Ryan. Can you tell me one favorite thing about this app? What's one of the super thing you think this app offers?
I would say my favorite thing about this app is for sure the health library. I love the way that you can filter different topics. And so, for example, if you're struggling with something really specific going on in your life, you can absolutely go into the health library, type that in, and it's going to show you resources that are either, directly related to whatever's going on or maybe congruently related. And that is a really handy tool to have. And this information isn't just NBDF resources. They do come from NextJ Health and the CDC. So obviously there's an abundance of knowledge in the health library.
Great. Yeah, that sounds super. Heather, what about you?
I think my favorite thing in the app is the availability of the health coach. So having somebody who can really brainstorm with you about what are some of the reasons that you might not be able or be taking your treatment the way your doctor has prescribed, and how can we get you back on track, and how can we help you with your other health goals. The fact that this is free and available is an amazing feature, I think, of this program.
Yeah, that sounds terrific. Brendan?
I think I would have to say that the thing that I'm really super excited about is it's an app. And I think people aren't as inclined to do, kind of programs where they're in front of their laptop all the time. The cool thing about this is you can be standing in line at the grocery store and you can do a workbook on your phone. So, I mean, that's just awesome. I also love that there's privacy built in. So I don't have to feel bad about not being an expert at any one thing. It's okay for me to say, yeah, I don't know if I'm really super knowledgeable about that. So I want to learn more. And no one needs to know about that. So I really love that.
Great, super. Well, thank you. Thank you both, all three actually, for all of that information. I think it's really exciting, and I hope people will follow that link and take a look at this, the Own Your Path app. We'll shift our focus now over to the Thrive program, and we are very fortunate to have Lena Volland joining us to tell us all about Thrive. And following Lena's presentation, we'll have a couple more minutes where we can take some more questions, especially ones about the Thrive program. So if Lena is able to share her screen, I will pass things on now to her. There we go.
Thank you so much, Fiona, for that lovely introduction. And thank you again, Brandon, Ryan, and Heather, for sharing such valuable information to our community. So we are shifting gears a little bit right now, but only a smidge, because I am really, really excited to be able to talk to everybody today about the Thrive campaign, which is also part of our CDC cooperative agreements. So again, you saw this slide before with Brandon, but what I really wanted to highlight is that last little sentence that you see here, enabling people and families to thrive. And that's really at the heart and center of our Thrive campaign, which I'm happy to illuminate a little bit more. So we want to make this a little bit interactive. So I'm going to give everybody a little bit of time to grab your phone or open up another browser or grab a tablet, whatever you have handy. And then please utilize this code. You want to go to www.menti.com and you want to utilize this code here, 89132511. You can also utilize the QR code that is on the side there as well. So while everybody is logging on and joining us in our Menti, I would love to gauge a little bit more. I see people joining us slowly on who is actually in the audience today. So I know Brandon, Heather, Ryan, and I, and Fiona are here, but I really would love to hear more. What is bringing you to our webinar today? And this is really your primary role. I know we are all wearing different hats, and many of us are community members, and we might have a position as staff or for our chapter. But what is the primary role that you're fulfilling that is bringing you to our Wednesday webinar today? So I see people are popping in here. I'm going to give it just another minute so everybody can join us. And in the meantime, if you have not seen, our Thrive campaign actually launched this weekend, and I can't wait to tell you more about what is Thrive. And so, okay, so we have 9 people on. So I'm hoping some more will join us along the way. So I have another question for those of you who are healthcare providers. How many people with bleeding disorders do you normally have in your care or currently in your care? So there just needs to be a rough estimate, like how many people are you normally caring for? Wonderful. Anybody else out there? Okay, and those of you who are working in chapters, what about you? How many people are part of your chapter? How many people do you currently help and support? From our chapters here. Moment of silence. Okay, so in the meantime, let me tell you a little bit more about Thrive and why I'm so very excited for this particular campaign to launch and be available to everybody out there. So as I've said earlier, Thrive is part of our cooperative agreement with the CDC. And as such, it is a campaign that is nationwide and launched just this weekend. So the goals of Thrive are to educate individuals with bleeding disorders of 6 key steps to leading a healthy life And along the way, we are providing resources and empower our community members to essentially thrive in their everyday life. So you can see the 6 steps outlined here, but we will dive much more deeper into these. So it's really about education and providing resources to help accomplish our goals. So again, as I've mentioned, this is part of our cooperative agreement, and you heard Brandon, Ryan, and Heather talk about our CDC cooperative agreement a little bit earlier, and their wonderful app and initiative is nested within the treatment focus areas. But there are 2 more focus areas to this particular cooperative agreement. One is on women, girls, and people who have had the potential to menstruate, a WGPPM, and then we have an inhibitor focus area. Now, our Thrive campaign is actually nested within the inhibitor focus area. You might ask, like, what in the world does the Thrive campaign have to do with inhibitors? So stay tuned. I'll take you along the journey of how the Thrive campaign came about. So it is not something that developed overnight or with a quick little idea. We went through many years and lots of extensive work to come up and design the Thrive campaign. So we started out originally with a very in-depth literature review. So we turned every stone upside down to not only learn more about inhibitors, but also about general health behavior with a specific focus on screening and testing, trying to find out a little bit more. Why are people not getting screened for certain diseases, disorders, or complications? And what are kind of limiting factors here? Now, from there, we designed a community survey, and this particular survey was nested within the health belief model. And we wanted to find out more. What are these limiting factors of why people might not receive a inhibitor screen or test, or why their children might not get tested, where the roadblocks are, and really unpacking some of the knowledge gaps that might present themselves. So we've learned quite a bit, and we felt we needed to dig a little bit deeper. So we held several discussion groups, and these discussion groups were with our community members, and we were particularly focusing on parents of children with hemophilia A and B who have never been diagnosed with an inhibitor. So we wanted to learn a little bit more of what some of the knowledge gaps might be, how they are thinking about screening and testing for inhibitors, and how they are really obtaining their knowledge and how they learn about inhibitors. And it was very insightful. I'm unpacking those themes a little bit later. But from there, we went into a brainstorming with our wonderful working group to come up with this amazing campaign. We developed the first initial drafts of our Thrive campaign, sent them back to our working group for their reviews, insights, and inputs. And then we finalized all of our campaign materials in the campaign itself. Now, again, this is a CDC cooperative agreement. So throughout this entire process, we have had feedback and ideas and thoughts from the CDC as well, which were integrated throughout our many, many different feedback sessions. So in an overview, it was not just a campaign that was developed overnight with just Lena and Kate and Brendan and other people, Nicole, sitting around the table, but we gathered a lot of feedback from our community to design something meaningful and hopefully helpful for everybody. So wanted to highlight a little bit more of the results, and obviously we are just limited a little bit in time, so I can't unpack all of the details that we have found in our initial search, but I wanted to highlight some of the main big themes and findings themselves. So again, that first initial survey that we conducted was grounded in the health belief model. And the goal here was really to unpack some of the knowledge gaps to one degree, but then also what would be limiting somebody from taking their child to getting a screen for an inhibitor, or maybe really knowing about inhibitors in general. And the biggest variability in all of these was identified in perceived susceptibility. So this is leaning on how susceptible somebody is for developing an inhibitor. And that's really where the biggest discrepancy lay. So again, we held those wonderful discussion groups. And I think that was one of my favorites in this entire discovery phase, to really unpack a little bit more of how people are viewing inhibitors, where some of the knowledge gaps are, and we had some very insightful ideas from here. So some of the learnings that came about from these discussion groups was when people are obtaining knowledge. So inhibitors are scary. And to people who are not directly involved with inhibitors, meaning they themselves do not have an active or tolerized inhibitor and their children have never been diagnosed with an inhibitor, they do not necessarily seek out that particular information because right now it is not relevant. And hopefully it will never be relevant to them because it is very scary. I think everybody had a clear understanding of the consequences of having an inhibitor, but they may not dig deep and unpack all of the nuances and details and education that is provided and available to them, because again, it is scary. However, they highlighted also that general information about inhibitors is very beneficial, including prevalence, how common are these, what is an inhibitor, how does it impact somebody's body, how does it impact the treatment, what are treatment options. So general information about inhibitors is really fantastic and great. So the question then was really though, how can we mobilize our parents of children who have never been diagnosed with an inhibitor to seek out this information without it sounding scary? Now, a couple of other things that we unpacked in these discussion groups, that some helpful tools for people would be to have some sort of a patient-provider engagement tool that will really help foster some discussion. Because what we unpacked also throughout this CDC cooperative agreement, more so on the healthcare provider side, is that very often inhibitor screens are conducted and they are part of the annual comprehensive exam, but that conversation between the healthcare providers and the parents might not always occur. So our discussion group outlined it would be really amazing to have some sort of a tool that they can take with them to their annual comprehensive visit and have some questions and some talking points on. They also highlighted it would be great to have checklists of things in general that they could do to really lead healthy lives and all the different steps that they should be considering. And we also talked a little bit more about the messaging around inhibitors and how much they would be appreciated and who should deliver these. And our discussion group outlined that they love to hear from community members, from other people who are walking on similar paths, who have made similar experiences, as well as trustworthy healthcare providers, people that are well known, people that are very genuine in their delivery of the messages. So those were really people that they would be looking forward to. So this was all really fantastic information that we will then took back to our working group. We have established a phenomenal working group with wonderful people who really represent different lenses. So it includes healthcare providers who are involved with the HTCs. It includes some chapter representatives, as well as people who have actually experienced inhibitors, as well as our target audience of parents of children who have not been diagnosed with an inhibitor. So all of these were able to bring wonderful ideas and thoughts to the table and helped us design the Thrive campaign. So the Thrive campaign is leaning on a campaign that was developed with the CDC many, many years ago. So those of you who have been around for a while might remember the Do the 5 campaign, which was around mostly in the late 90s, early 2000s, and was one of the most successful campaigns that we've done in collaboration with the CDC. So we really wanted to bring the Do the 5 back, but obviously in a more modern, more up-to-date way. And so we used that as a foundation for developing the Thrive campaign. And our working group had so many amazing ideas. We took all of their feedback back and created the initial drafts of the concept of the Thrive campaign, as well as some ideas for some of the tools that we wanted to include them. Obviously integrated their feedback, and this is the end result. Thrive is live. So what are the 6 different steps that are part of our Thrive campaign? So I want to highlight that none of these steps is more important than the other. And there's no specific order, like you need to do this first, then this, then this, then this. It is just an acronym that will really help us remember the 6 different steps that we should all take to thrive. So our T is to take advantage of regular care from healthcare providers focusing on bleeding disorders. Now, we all know that this is most often done or most successfully done at one of our wonderful healthcare hemophilia treatment centers, but we do know not everybody has access to those for various reasons or chooses to go to one of our community partners. But most importantly, really take advantage of all the wonderful care that you can receive from somebody who's focusing on bleeding disorders. Now, our H, this is where we're hiding our inhibitor messaging. So as you've heard from the discussion groups before, we really wanted to make sure that we are integrating information on inhibitors in a more positive light. We didn't want it to sound scary. We didn't want to get people really afraid to learn more about inhibitors and make it a very scary step. So we also wanted to foster for people to have a conversation with their healthcare provider. As we have found, again, as I mentioned before, that very often there might be a connection, misunderstanding, misinformation between whether or not an inhibitor screen might be relevant, whether or not an inhibitor screen might already be done and part of the annual exam. And so we really wanted to integrate a point that fosters that conversation. So this is where we have our H. Our H is to have a conversation with your healthcare provider about yearly inhibitor testing. Step 3, or our R, is to review the latest treatment options to you. Our treatment landscape has drastically changed over the last couple of years, and it is important for our community members to stay somewhat up to date on what is available to them, but then also to have the conversation again with their healthcare provider to lay out a treatment plan that is best suited. Our step 4 is the I, and this is focused on identify, treat, and fully healed from bleeding episode. With the changing treatment landscape, lots of people have received amazing medications from a young age and may not be able to fully identify or correctly identify when they are bleeding, which may delay appropriate treatment. So this was important to our working group members to integrate. But then we also wanted to focus on the fully healed component, which is to completely rehabilitate after a bleeding episode to make sure you're ready to return to your prior activities and safe as well. So step 5 is to value and make time for our emotional and mental health. So obviously mental health is a vital component for all of us in this bleeding disorders community. And it is important that we prioritize our needs in this area as well. And then our E is to embrace our bleeding disorder community and to get involved. We have a wonderful network of chapters who provide insightful information, helpful resources, but also a place to connect and network and build community. So it is important to become part of that community and really embrace all of the wonderful opportunities there are. So along the way, we have created some very amazing resources. We do have those available online. You can download them. You can also receive them from us in printed versions. If you're working at an HTC and you would like to hand them out to your patients, you can have these available as well as for chapters. If you would love to have them, please let us know. So these are one-pagers who just dive a lot deeper into each of the components and the 6 different key steps of Thrive. We also have developed a wonderful Q&A record that provides different questions that people can ask their providers to talk a little bit more about inhibitors. So it has some general information question, it has testing information question, and then general questions of like, what happens if I do get diagnosed with an inhibitor? So those are available too, so people can utilize them. And then we thought we needed something for our younger audience as well. So we created a Thrive coloring activity book, which provides us the opportunity to color and learn more about the different steps of Thrive and also figuring out how we are thriving on our own. So this is available as well. And you can find all of these amazing resources On our Thrive website, which is now live, it also provides a much deeper dive into the different 6 steps, as well as additional resources for each. For example, if you're looking into our mental health component, it provides additional resources for people with bleeding disorders, as well as connects them to any crisis hotlines. For our E, we are also providing connections to our chapter network and finding a chapter and so forth. So each step provides a lot more in-depth information as well as resources. So check it out. Now, what I would love to do is, again, grab your phone, make sure you are still logged into your Menti. The code is up there again in case you need them. It was 89132511. And I would really love to know, after you've heard about these amazing steps up from our Thrive campaign, which step will you be focusing on next? Is it our T, our H, our R, our I, V, or E? Which one will be the focus for you next? So I'm going to give everybody a quick little moment to log in, join us here, and let us know which step you will be focusing on. Should play some Jeopardy music or so. The V, the value and make time for emotional and mental health. Absolutely. So more there, embracing the bleeding disorder community and getting involved. Viewing the latest treatment options. Wonderful. Thanks so much for pointing these out. Anything else? Definitely focus on research. Just a minute. Have people join us. Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing as well. So as for next steps, we really hope that all of you will join us in this initiative, in this larger campaign, and help us spread the word on Thrive. So you might have seen some initial social media posts going out this past week. Look out the next couple of weeks. We will have many more to come, and there's much more activity going to happen throughout the year. So stay tuned, but make sure you're engaging with us on social media. Feel free to share and send those posts forward to anybody you know and you want to learn more about. We will also have an amazing session at our 2024 Bleeding Disorders Conference. So if you're attending BDC, make sure you're checking out our Thrive session. You will also see us at some of the chapter events where we will be sharing more on Thrive, as well as some of the amazing tools available within this campaign. We will be visiting some of the HTCs. So if you want us to stop by, make sure you let us know. And you can also receive a lot of the printed resources so that our community members can receive them when they are visiting their HTC next. And then just in general, help us disseminate these amazing resources that are part of the Thrive campaign. And yeah, those again are available on the website for download as well as in print, should you need them in print. So with this, let me know, who will you be sharing our Thrive campaign with? So this one is one where you don't click. So if you're still on our Menti, make sure you type this in. Who are you going to share Thrive with? So I know I've shared it with everybody out there who's on this webinar today, but I will continue to share it at chapter events. I'm really looking forward to attending some of the more local events and being able to spread the message of Thrive, the 6 different steps, but then also to provide some of the amazing resources to our community members. I think I'm really excited about being out in the community and being at these great events. So, but who will you share Thrive with? Your family, friends and colleagues, social media network, a healthcare team and patients. Absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. Please, wonderful. Okay, so then with this, I'll be happy to answer any questions. Just as a reminder, same situation as Ryan mentioned at the end of their presentation. This is, again, supported by the CDC through our CDC cooperative agreement. So with this, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have on the Thrive campaign.
Super. Thank you very much, Lena, for the really interesting dynamic presentation about the development of the Thrive program and what it offers the community. Just before we do dive into the questions, I want to remind people to take a look in their chat. We put the link there to the Thrive program. So if you didn't scan the QR code when it was up, pop in there, grab the Thrive address and save it somewhere so that you can go back to it once the webinar ends. So we have a couple of questions that our audience has brought to us. One of them was asking whether the development documents, so for example, the results of the surveys that you did, whether those are available anywhere.
They are not publicly available. So, but if I'm ever invited back to do another Wednesday webinar, I would be more than happy to dive deeper into those results. Obviously, we just had 30 minutes, and that's not enough time to unpack all of the different findings that we have made, just to highlight a few big topics. But they are not publicly available on our websites or anywhere else. Sorry.
Any thoughts about maybe writing up a paper from them?
So this is part of the CDC cooperative agreement. So I'm not sure we can write a manuscript on this, but
Okay.
we can write an article. I don't know.
There you go. Maybe.
If I have time, but I would be more than happy to come back for another Wednesday webinar or another presentation to dive much deeper into all the different findings and elements that went into the development of the Thrive campaign.
Great. Super. And there is a question as to whether the Thrive pamphlets are available in Spanish.
That is such a great question. So as of right now, we have only launched Thrive in English. However, stay tuned because it will come in Spanish next year. So this is a big part of our final year of the CDC cooperative agreement. And the reason why we are not launching it simultaneously is that we didn't just want to translate Thrive. Because Thrive in itself doesn't make any sense in Spanish. All the alignment within the acronym doesn't necessarily work within the Spanish language. And we really wanted to do it justice. So if we do a Thrive campaign and develop materials in Spanish, it really needs to be done with the community, and it really needs to make sense as well. So this is our initiative for the coming year. So this fall, we will be working with our working group to develop the Spanish version of Thrive. And then at the beginning of next year, crossing my fingers that everything will work out, all of these will become available in Spanish, and we'll do the same in Spanish.
Great. And maybe I can ask you one last question, a little bit of an oddball question. I know that you said none of the 6 elements is more important than the other. Is there one that maybe surprised you a little bit, that wasn't what you were expecting to come out as a highlight? Because this really came from all of the input that you had, and probably some of it you could see, like, of course, that's going to be a key thing. Is there one thing that out of those 6 that rose up that you're like, oh, at the outset, I wouldn't necessarily have picked that?
It wasn't really surprising for me. I was more pleasantly surprised that people had kind of similar thoughts as I did going into this. And I was more excited really of what they brought to the table, because there were so many thoughts that I've had being in this community for many years now. I think one aspect that I really got excited about was that the importance that everybody put on the mental health component, because that was never really a part of Do the 5 initiative, which we did many, many years ago. And I just love that everybody felt so strong that it needed to have its own key step, that it's not like weaved in somewhere as an additional element, but that it needed its own significant step to raise its importance. I think that was one of the things where I was just really pleasantly happy about.
Yeah.
I think the other thing where I thought like we really needed this, but I was very happy that everybody from the working group kind of felt the same way, and I didn't guide them that way. This was really what they brought forward, is the addition of identify, treat, and fully heal bleeds. Whereas in the past, it was all about make sure you're treating bleeds right away. But I think this really expands it from like, okay, in order to treat something right away, I need to understand that this is actually a true bleed, and this is a bleeding episode that I'm experiencing. And then obviously to not just treat and then go straight back to everything that you have been doing, but really seeing it through and going through the entire rehabilitation process. So me being a physical therapist from background, that was always such a key concept that I hoped everybody would understand. And I was so happy when our working group brought exactly this point forward. So to answer your question fully, sorry, that was a long answer, but I wasn't surprised, but I was happy how they valued some of the things that I was seeing too.
Super. Yeah, great. Well, I think that's a great note to end on. I would like to thank Lena Volland and also Ryan Sarshuri, Heather Hicks, and Brendan Hayes from the NBDF education team for sharing your expertise and your time with us this afternoon. I'd also like to thank each of you in our audience for joining us today. This recorded webinar will be available on the NBDF website shortly after the webinar. Note that the NBDF website has recently changed from hemophilia.org to bleeding.org. If you go to that site under the events tab and select past events, you can find recordings of all of the past webinars there. And you can also see upcoming events, including the next Wednesday webinars. Join us next on Wednesday, June the 12th, when Miguel Cratu and Olivia Romero-Lux, the president and CEO respectively of the European Hemophilia Consortium, will tell us about some of the EHC initiatives that seek to advance inclusion in the inherited bleeding disorders community and its patient organizations. Thank you so much for joining us today, and have an excellent week.